Beyond the shadows, something remarkable has happened. We've hit 10,000 subscribers on Void of Fears. To everyone who subscribed, liked, commented, and shared, thank you. This milestone exists because of you. But our journey into the darkness has only begun. Now we set our sights on 100,000 subscribers. An ambitious goal, but together, we can reach it. Your engagement fuels this channel. Every like and comment helps these nightmares find new victims across the algorithm. Now let's dive into the void where tonight's story awaits you. I never believed in conspiracy theories. As an intelligence analyst with the Pentagon for 15 years, I'd seen the ridiculous claims about alien autopsies and government cover-ups. I'd laughed at the paranoid ramblings about secret underground bases and extraterrestrial technology. That was before I was assigned to Project Obsidian, before I learned the horrifying truth. My name is Elliot Mercer. I had a level 5 alpha security clearance and a reputation for meticulous analysis of aerial defense data. That's why Colonel Jenkins called me into his office on that rainy Thursday in April. The office windows streamed with water as he slid a black folder across his desk. "Congratulations, Mercer, you've been selected for a special assignment," he said, his face expressionless. "Report to Sub-Level C, Room 47 tomorrow at 7 a.m. Tell no one." The folder contained only a single page with the Project Obsidian logo, a black diamond surrounding a stylized eye. No details, just a reporting time and location. I'd worked on classified projects before, but something about the Colonel's demeanor sent a chill down my spine. That night I tried researching Project Obsidian, but found nothing. Not even a passing reference in the Pentagon's internal systems. It was as if the project didn't exist. I didn't sleep well. Dreams of dark skies and watching eyes plagued me until dawn. The security protocols the next morning were unlike anything I'd experienced before. Retinal mapping, voice pattern analysis, and a psychological assessment that lasted 3 hours. Questions designed to test my loyalty, my skepticism, my willingness to accept the impossible. I signed 6 different non-disclosure agreements, each more threatening than the last. A guard escorted me through a series of security checkpoints to a nondescript door at the end of a long corridor. He scanned his badge, and the door slid open to reveal what looked like an ordinary conference room. "Welcome to Project Obsidian," said a tall man with wire-rimmed glasses and a shock of white hair. "I'm Dr. Thaddeus Vance. You come highly recommended, Mr. Mercer." The team was small, just 5 analysts including myself, 2 physicists and Dr. Vance. The briefing room was windowless, illuminated by harsh fluorescent lights that made everyone look sickly. None of the other analysts would meet my eyes. "You're here because you're the best at what you do," Vance continued, "and because you can keep your mouth shut." The lights dimmed and a projection appeared on the wall. At first, I thought I was looking at standard aircraft footage from a military exercise. Then I saw it. An object moving at impossible speeds, making 90-degree turns without deceleration. This footage was captured 3 months ago by an F-18 Super Hornet off the coast of San Diego, Vance said calmly. "What you're seeing has been authenticated by our best analysts. It is not a glitch. It is not a weather phenomenon. And it is certainly not one of ours." I watched as the object disappeared from one part of the screen and instantly appeared in another. No blur of movement, no trail, just gone, and then there. "Impossible," I whispered. "That's why you're here, Mr. Mercer," Vance replied with a thin smile. "To help us understand the impossible." The next video showed similar phenomena over restricted airspace in Arizona, then Virginia, then international waters near Japan. Each incident documented, analysed and classified at the highest levels. "These incidents have increased 400% in the past decade," Vance explained. "Initially we dismissed them as sensor malfunctions or pilot error. That position is no longer tenable. One of the physicists, Dr. Eleanor Winters, stepped forward. The objects demonstrate capabilities that defy our understanding of physics. They show no signs of conventional propulsion. They can accelerate from hovering to hypersonic speeds instantaneously. They can operate with equal facility in atmosphere and vacuum. And you're sure they're not experimental aircraft, ours or someone else's? I asked. Vance exchanged glances with Winters. We're sure they're not ours. As for someone else's, that's one theory we're investigating. For the next month, I analysed countless hours of similar footage. Objects defying the laws of physics. Aircraft, if you could call them that, performing manoeuvres that would turn human pilots into red paste from the G-forces alone. My skepticism eroded with each passing day. The team was professional but distant. Conversations stopped when I entered rooms. Dr. Winters would sometimes stare at me with an expression I couldn't read. Concern? Pity? The other analysts avoided eye contact entirely. Only Vance seemed comfortable, but his calm demeanour had taken on a sinister quality. I often caught him watching me when he thought I wasn't looking. I began having headaches, vivid dreams, moments of déjà vu so powerful they left me disoriented. I attributed it to stress and lack of sleep, but a part of me wondered if there was more to it. Working late one night, I noticed a pattern in the sighting locations. Plotting them on a map revealed clusters around military installations, particularly in Nevada. Digging deeper into classified files, I found references to Dreamland operations in connection with unidentified aerial phenomena. The term Dreamland was familiar, the nickname for Area 51, the secret base at Groom Lake, Nevada, the same base that had been the focus of conspiracy theories for decades. At 3 a.m., bleary-eyed from staring at screens, I discovered hidden timestamps embedded in the digital files. They showed that many of the sightings dated back decades, despite the official stance that these investigations were recent developments. Some files had been deliberately mislabeled and buried in unrelated archives. Why hide this information from analysts who were supposed to be investigating it? I wasn't supposed to access the Indigo 7 database. My clearance technically didn't allow it, but I found a security exploit through an outdated terminal in the archive room. Sloppy security, which was unusual for a project of this sensitivity, almost as if someone wanted me to find it. What I discovered there changed everything. Communications between the Joint Chiefs and Nellis Test Range discussing the acquisition and containment of non-conventional aircraft. Transport manifests for specialized equipment shipped to Groom Lake, Nevada, the location commonly known as Area 51, and most disturbing, medical supply requisitions for xenobiological research subjects. I downloaded what I could onto a secure drive and erased my tracks. As I was leaving the archive room, I nearly collided with Dr. Winters. "Working late?" she asked, her expression unreadable. "Just following up on some anomalies in the pattern recognition," I lied. She studied me for a moment. "Be careful, Elliot. Some doors, once opened, can't be closed again." Before I could respond, she walked away, leaving me with the uncomfortable feeling that she knew exactly what I'd been doing. I knew I was crossing a line, but I couldn't stop. The analyst in me needed the complete picture. The human in me was terrified of what that picture might show. 2 days later, my personal phone, a device that should have been impervious to outside access, received an encrypted message. It was signed simply Icarus. "They're watching you, Elliot Mercer. Your recent inquiries have triggered alerts. If you want the truth about Project Obsidian, about what they recovered from the Kingman crash site in 1953, meet me. Come alone." Attached were coordinates for a location in the Nevada desert. The message also contained classified codenames I'd only seen in the Indigo 7 database. Whoever Icarus was, they had deep access to the program. I debated reporting the contact, but something held me back. Instead, I used my clearance to access even more restricted files, the Umbra archives, which required special authorization. I falsified Dr. Vance's credentials and gained entry. What I found sickened me. Files labelled Visitor Examination contained photos of beings that were humanoid but clearly not human. Elongated cranial structures, atrophied digestive systems, neural pathways that looked like fibre optic networks rather than organic material. More disturbing were the containment protocols for non-terrestrial sentient entities for something called Hangar 18C, and evidence of Operation Mockingbird 2, a systematic campaign to discredit witnesses and manipulate media coverage of sightings. The next file stopped my heart. Personnel transfer orders with my name on them, dated 2 months before I joined Project Obsidian. I had been selected for this assignment long before Colonel Jenkins called me into his office, but why? That night, I noticed small details in my apartment were off. Items moved slightly from where I'd left them. When I swept for surveillance, I found 3 devices I hadn't detected before. Someone had been in my home watching me. The following morning, I arrived at the office to find Dr. Winters waiting by my desk. She slipped me a note as she passed. They know, burn everything. An hour later, Vance summoned me to his office. You've been making excellent progress, Elliot, he said, his smile not reaching his eyes. Your pattern analysis of the Nevada sightings was particularly insightful. I hadn't submitted any analysis of Nevada sightings. He was telling me they knew about my unauthorized research. Thank you, sir, I replied, keeping my expression neutral. We're considering a field assignment. The Groom Lake facility has requested an analyst with your expertise. Would you be interested? A trap, obviously, but refusing would alert them that I suspected something. I'd be honoured, I said. Excellent. We'll make the arrangements. In the meantime, continue your current analysis. Focus on the temporal anomalies in the San Diego footage. The next morning, I requested emergency leave, citing a family medical crisis. No one questioned it, which made me even more suspicious. I packed a bag, left my phone and laptop behind, and purchased a burner phone from a convenience store with cash. Then I began the long drive to the coordinates Icarus had sent. I took a circuitous route, switching rental cars twice and paying cash each time. Paranoid perhaps, but the stakes were too high for half measures. The Nevada desert has a stark beauty that becomes increasingly alien the further you drive from civilization. Red rock formations rise like the spines of buried monsters. The sky spreads impossibly wide, a blue so intense it hurts your eyes. After 6 hours of driving, the paved road gave way to gravel, then to dirt, and finally to barely visible tracks winding between scrub brush and sand. The abandoned mining town of Prosperity consisted of a dozen decaying wooden structures, their windows dark, empty sockets, staring out at the desert. The only sign of life was a dusty blue pickup truck parked beside what had once been the general store. As I approached, a figure emerged from the shadows of the doorway. The man was gaunt, with grey skin that had an odd sheen to it. His hands trembled constantly, and dark circles shadowed eyes that seemed too large for his face. "Mr. Mercer," he said, his voice rough. "I'm Dr. Rowan Keller, though you know me as Icarus." "You worked for Project Obsidian?" I asked. He laughed bitterly. "I didn't work for it, I created it. 20 years ago, when we finally managed to activate the propulsion system recovered from the Kingman crash." "What happened to you?" I couldn't help asking. His skin had an iridescent quality in the sunlight, almost like mother of pearl. "Exposure to quantum particulate during the tests," he said matter-of-factly. "It's terminal. Which is why I don't care anymore about their security protocols or their threats. The world needs to know the truth before it's too late." Inside the abandoned store, dust motes danced in the shafts of light that broke through the boarded windows. Keller showed me his credentials: authentic Pentagon identification and security cards for facilities I hadn't even known existed. "You've been chosen, Elliot," he said, his trembling hands lighting a cigarette. "Just like I was, just like all of us were." "Chosen for what?" "For contact, for transformation." He exhaled a plume of smoke. "They select people with specific neurological profiles. People whose brains can withstand the changes without immediate breakdown." "Who selects them?" "The military thinks they're running the program. They think they're studying technology from crashed alien ships, but they're being manipulated. We all are." His laugh dissolved into a wet cough. "There are no crashes, no aliens, only contact and infiltration." He handed me a small drive. "The Phoenix files," he said. "Everything I could download before I escaped. They're hunting me, but they won't find me alive. This is your burden now." I had 1,000 questions, but Keller cut me off. "You need to go. They'll have tracked your rental car by now, even with the precautions you took. Head north, not south. There's a motel in Carroll Springs that doesn't ask questions." As I turned to leave, he grabbed my arm with surprising strength. "Don't trust Vance, don't trust anyone from the program, and watch for the symptoms. Headaches, vivid dreams, moments of knowing things you shouldn't. Once they start, you don't have much time left." I was halfway to my car when the first bullet struck the dirt near my feet. I dove for cover as more shots rang out. From behind the store came the sound of Keller's pickup starting up. "Run!" he shouted as he drove past me, drawing the fire of unseen attackers. I sprinted to my rental car and peeled out, dust billowing behind me. In the rearview mirror, I saw Keller's truck veer off the road and crash into a ravine. A plume of black smoke rose into the clear blue sky. Following his advice, I headed north, abandoned the rental car in a shopping mall parking lot, and took a bus to Carroll Springs. The Desert Horizon Motel was exactly the kind of place Keller had described. Run down, cash only, no cameras. Back in my room, I plugged the drive into a laptop I purchased with cash. What I saw destroyed any remaining doubts. Video logs from a facility identified as Delphi, located beneath Papoose Lake at the Nevada test site. Test flights of aircraft, no, craft, that moved unlike anything manufactured by human hands. The vessel, codenamed Ouroboros, seemed to bend space around it rather than move through it. More disturbing were the medical files. Test pilots exposed to the craft's propulsion system reported hearing voices, experiencing shared dreams. 2 described knowing what others were thinking. Brain scans showed increased activity in previously dormant regions. Genetic testing showed subtle but accelerating changes to their DNA. Dr. Keller's notes were the most frightening. The recovered craft wasn't just technologically advanced, it appeared to respond to thought. Not through any recognizable computer interface, but directly, as if it was somehow alive, or at least aware. His theory was that the technology functioned by manipulating reality through consciousness itself. That prolonged exposure was creating something new. Humans whose perception and interaction with reality was fundamentally altered. The government wasn't hiding aliens. They were hiding what humans were becoming after contact with the technology. The final video log showed Keller himself, already showing signs of the transformation. "The Prometheus protocol is proceeding as scheduled," he said, his eyes reflecting light oddly. "First-generation subjects show 82% neural reconfiguration. Second-generation subjects are beginning to demonstrate non-local consciousness sharing. The Coalition is pleased with our progress." "Coalition? What coalition?" The log ended abruptly, leaving me with more questions than answers. I was so absorbed in the files that I almost missed the black SUVs pulling into the motel parking lot. 3 vehicles, men in tactical gear emerging with military precision. I grabbed the laptop and the drive and slipped out the bathroom window as they breached the door. The chase through Tikaboo Valley was a blur of dust and panic. Desert roads barely wide enough for a single vehicle. The roar of a Nighthawk helicopter appearing over the ridge. I abandoned the car in a narrow canyon and continued on foot, eventually finding shelter in a flash flood drainage tunnel as darkness fell. Night in the desert is cold and unforgiving. I huddled in the tunnel, shivering, listening for any sound of pursuit. Above me, stars crowded the sky, in numbers I'd never seen in the city. They seemed to pulse and shift as I watched, patterns emerging and dissolving. I blinked hard, attributing the hallucination to exhaustion and stress. The headache started around midnight, a sharp pain behind my eyes that grew until it felt like someone was driving an ice pick into my brain. With it came flashes of memories that weren't mine, a laboratory I'd never seen, faces I didn't recognize, a language I couldn't understand but somehow knew. Keller's warning echoed in my mind. Watch for the symptoms, headaches, vivid dreams, moments of knowing things you shouldn't. Once they start, you don't have much time left. When dawn came, I made my way to a truck stop 10 miles away. I cleaned up in the bathroom, purchased food and water, and hitchhiked with a long-haul trucker to the next town over. The Dust Devil Motel was the kind of place that didn't ask questions when you paid in cash, and looked like you'd crawled through the desert. I showered away the dust and blood from scrapes acquired during my escape, then continued reviewing the files. Personnel files from Groom Lake showed an alarming pattern. Staff exposed to the recovered technology began exhibiting synchronized behavior. Minor at first, finishing each other's sentences, showing up for work at exactly the same time without coordination. Then more extreme, identical dreams reported during REM sleep studies, simultaneous physical reactions, despite being in different rooms. A memo from Dr. Vance proposed accelerating the Prometheus protocol based on these results. The integration is proceeding faster than anticipated, he wrote. Subject Keller has advanced to Phase 3 and demonstrates complete synthesis with the Ouroboros technology. Neural reconfiguration appears to have reached critical mass. Recommend immediate transfer to Sector Omega for final transition. The memo was dated just 3 months ago. Whatever had happened to Keller, it had progressed rapidly after that report. I found a list of potential integration candidates, civilians with specific neurological markers who were being monitored without their knowledge. My name was on the list, along with Dr. Winters and dozens of others. A noise outside my door made me freeze. Voices in the hall, the crackle of a radio. I closed the laptop and crept to the window. Black SUVs in the parking lot again. They'd found me. I was preparing to escape through the bathroom window again when the door splintered open. Black-clad figures poured in, weapons raised. Something stung my neck, and the world went dark. I dreamed of stars falling to earth and burrowing beneath the skin of sleeping humans. I dreamed of a vast consciousness spreading like a web across the planet, connecting mind to mind. I dreamed of Dr. Keller, his skin now fully translucent, whispering, "It's too late, Elliot. The transformation has begun." I awoke in a sterile room with luminescent white walls that seemed to glow from within. No visible light fixtures, no visible door. Just smooth, faintly humming surfaces and the gurney I was strapped to. "You've caused quite a stir, Mr. Mercer," said a familiar voice. Dr. Vance stepped into view, tablet in hand. "We've been monitoring your vital signs. Remarkable resilience for someone your age." "Where am I?" I demanded, though I already knew. "Dreamland, specifically the Delphi facility, about 600 feet beneath the surface of Papoose Lake." He checked something on his tablet. "You weren't supposed to find out about this place for another 3 weeks. Your little detour to meet Dr. Keller accelerated our timeline." "What do you mean I wasn't supposed to find out for 3 weeks?" Vance smiled thinly. "You were selected for Project Obsidian for a reason, Elliot. Your analytical skills, yes, but more importantly, your psychological profile. we've been guiding your investigation from the beginning. The security exploit you discovered was left for you to find. The encrypted message from Keller was routed through our servers. Why? I struggled against my restraints. Because we need people who can arrive at the truth themselves, who can process what we've discovered without breaking. The real truth, not the story about aliens that the public has been fed for decades. You're experimenting on people without consent, transforming them into something else. We prefer to think of it as guided evolution, Vance replied. And as for consent, well, that's a complex ethical question when dealing with a paradigm shift of this magnitude. Sometimes the child must be pushed into the pool to learn to swim. He pressed something on his tablet, and a section of wall became transparent, revealing a massive chamber beyond. Inside was what appeared to be a rip in reality itself, a vertical fracture in the air through which impossible colours swirled and pulsed. They're not extraterrestrials, Elliot. They're humans, or what humans become in a different evolutionary branch, a different dimensional plane. They've been trying to make contact for decades, warning us. Warning us about what? About the consequences of developing this technology too quickly. About dimensional collapse if we continue the Prometheus protocol. He sighed heavily. But it's too late to stop the convergence now. We activated the system last month. The barrier between dimensions is already failing. A tall, slender figure stepped through the transparent wall, as if it weren't there. Dr. Winters, but changed. Her skin had the same iridescent quality I'd seen in Keller, her eyes now entirely black and reflective. "Eleanor?" I whispered. "She can't hear you," Vance said. "Not in the way you mean. Dr. Winters has fully integrated with the Amalgam consciousness. She's part of something larger now." Winters, or the thing that had been Winters, studied me with her obsidian eyes. When she spoke, her voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "The vessel is prepared. Neural architecture compatible. Begin final integration phase." "See," Vance said proudly, "she recognizes your potential. You're going to be an important part of what comes next, Elliot." "I don't want any part of this," I said, renewing my struggle against the restraints. "That's just fear talking. Fear of the unknown. Fear of change." Vance nodded to someone out of my view. "Everyone resists at first, but once the integration begins, you'll understand. You'll welcome it." A medical team entered, pushing a cart loaded with equipment I didn't recognize. One held a syringe filled with luminous blue fluid. "Prep him for primary exposure," Vance ordered. "Standard protocol." As they approached, alarms began to sound throughout the facility. Vance's tablet beeped urgently. "What now?" he snapped, scanning the screen. His face paled. "That's impossible. The Omega subjects are still in containment." Winters tilted her head as if listening to a distant sound. "The resonance cascade has begun. Premature, but inevitable. The amalgam rises." Vance looked genuinely afraid for the first time. "Secure the subject and evacuate to level 2, he ordered the medical team. "Initiate protocol fire break." The team rushed out, leaving me still strapped to the gurney. Vance turned to follow them, but Winters blocked his path. "Your function is concluded, Administrator Vance," she said, her voice now a harmonious chorus of many voices, speaking as one. "The Amalgam thanks you for your service." She placed a hand on his forehead. Vance went rigid, his eyes rolling back, then collapsed to the floor. Winters turned to me, head tilted in that inhuman way. "Elliot Mercer, your neural architecture is optimal. You will serve as a primary node in the new network." She reached for me, but more alarms blared, and she paused, head tilting again. "Containment failure in Sector Omega," she announced to no one. "The advanced subjects have breached primary barriers. The Amalgam calls." She turned and walked through the solid wall, leaving me alone with Vance's unconscious body. The restraints on the gurney had electronic locks. I managed to reach Vance's tablet and use his fingerprint to unlock them. As I freed myself, the lights flickered and the room shuddered as if from an earthquake. I searched Vance's pockets and found his security badge and a keycard. The wall that had turned transparent now revealed a corridor beyond. The door apparently unlocked during the power fluctuation. Vance led me, now unrestrained, but flanked by armed guards, through gleaming corridors to another section of the facility. A sign on the massive doors read, "Chrysalis Wing." "This is where we keep our most advanced subjects," he explained as we entered. The room beyond was filled with glass containment chambers. Inside each was a person, or something that had once been a person. Their skin had the same iridescent quality I'd seen in Dr. Keller, but more pronounced. Some had physical alterations, elongated fingers, enlarged cranial capacity, eyes that reflected light like mirrors. "What have you done to them?" I whispered. "We've freed them," Vance said. "These volunteers were exposed to controlled amounts of the dimensional technology. Their consciousnesses have been expanded. They can perceive and manipulate reality in ways we're only beginning to understand." I watched in horror as one subject raised a hand and the air in front of them seemed to fold. A cup on a table across the room disappeared and reappeared in their hand. "The Helios Division sees military applications, of course," Vance continued. "Imagine soldiers who can step through space, who can manipulate matter with thought alone." "They're not even human anymore," I said. "They're post-human, the next step in our evolution, and they're developing a collective consciousness we call the Amalgam. They dream together, think together. Soon they'll transcend individual identity entirely." One of the subjects turned to look at me, pressing a hand against the glass. Its eyes were completely black, like Dr. Winters had become. It smiled, revealing teeth that seemed too numerous, too sharp. "Why do they look so wrong?" I asked. "The physical changes are a side effect of the neural reconfiguration, cosmetic mostly. The real changes are happening in their minds." Vance tapped on his tablet, bringing up brain scans. "See these areas lighting up, parts of the brain that should be dormant. The technology is activating our full potential." "And you want to do this to everyone? Turn everyone into those things?" "Not everyone is compatible. About 30% of the population has the right neural architecture to survive the transformation. The rest?" He shrugged. "Evolution always has casualties." Vance's tablet beeped urgently. His face paled as he read the alert. "What is it?" I asked. "Containment breach in Sector Omega, the advanced subjects." His voice trailed off as alarm klaxons began to wail throughout the facility. "We've lost control." The lights flickered and the glass containment chambers around us shuddered. Fractures appeared in the reinforced glass. "We need to get out of here," Vance said, suddenly panicked. "If the Omega subjects have broken containment, the whole facility could be compromised." As he spoke, one of the fractures in the nearest containment chamber spread, spiderwebbing across the glass. The subject inside placed both hands against the weakened barrier and pushed. The glass shattered outward in a glittering explosion. Chaos erupted as emergency protocols activated. Staff ran through corridors as red warning lights flashed. Through glass windows I saw impossible things. Objects floating, walls bubbling like liquid. A researcher walking through a solid door as though it were air. One of the escaped subjects cornered a security guard. It placed a hand on the guard's forehead, just as Winters had done to Vance. The guard convulsed, then went still. When he opened his eyes again, they were solid black. In the confusion, I slipped away from my escorts. Dr. Keller's access codes, memorized from the Phoenix files, got me through security checkpoints. I found a data terminal and downloaded everything I could onto a quantum drive, then made my way upward through the facility. Reality itself seemed to be breaking down around me. Gravity fluctuated, causing objects to float momentarily before crashing back down. Rooms rearranged themselves, doorways leading to places they hadn't before. Researchers and security personnel ran in panic or stood frozen, staring at nothing with expressions of awe or terror. I found myself in a long corridor lined with doors. Through one open doorway I saw what appeared to be an ordinary office break room, except everything in it, tables, chairs, coffee mugs, was floating in mid-air. Through another, I saw a laboratory where all the equipment had melted into puddles of liquid metal that flowed upward against gravity. At the end of the corridor was a security station. The guards were gone, but the monitors showed scenes from throughout the facility. On one screen I saw a group of the transformed subjects moving in perfect unison, walking through walls as if they weren't there. On another, a massive room containing what looked like a larger version of the reality rip I'd seen earlier. This rip was expanding, its edges fluctuating wildly. As I watched, a figure stepped through, not from our side, but from whatever lay beyond. It looked human from a distance, but as cameras zoomed in, I could see that its proportions were wrong. Too tall, too thin, with too many joints in its limbs. More figures followed, dozens of them, emerging into our reality. Staff members who approached them underwent the same transformation I'd seen before. Convulsions, followed by the characteristic black eyes of the Amalgam. I had to get out, find a way to warn people. I checked the facility map at the security station and located an exit route leading to the surface. As I made my way upward, I encountered more of the transformed. Some ignored me, moving with purpose towards some unknown destination. Others reached for me with elongated fingers, calling my name though I'd never met them. I emerged on the surface as the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the dry lake bed. In the distance, the secure perimeter of Groom Lake was visible, its lights bright against the darkening sky. Emergency vehicles raced towards the Delphi facility entrance. A supply truck was idling at a checkpoint, its driver arguing with security. I slipped into the back unseen as alarms continued to blare across the base. An hour later, we passed through the Groom Gate and I was beyond the perimeter. I made my way to a small town where news reports were already coming in about atmospheric anomalies across the southwest. Unusual aurora-like lights, gravitational disturbances, animals behaving erratically. The official explanation was a weather phenomenon caused by solar flares. I knew better. I spent the night in a cheap motel reviewing the files I'd stolen. Project Obsidian had been operating for decades, studying what they believed to be crashed extraterrestrial craft. But Dr. Keller's notes suggested a different truth. The crashes were deliberate. The technology was being offered to us by entities from another dimensional plane, entities that were once human or something like human, before their own exposure to the technology changed them. The aliens weren't invaders. They were missionaries spreading their version of transhumanism across dimensional boundaries. And we'd taken the bait. The headaches grew worse that night. Visions flooded my mind. Distant cities where transformed humans walked alongside the visitors from beyond the rip. The sky above these cities was wrong, too purple, with two pale suns. I saw Dr. Winters leading a group of the transformed through the streets of Washington, D.C., touching foreheads and adding to their numbers. I saw Dr. Keller, fully transformed now, his body barely recognizable as human, working alongside the entities at a massive structure that pulsed with energy. These weren't dreams or hallucinations. They were glimpses of what was happening, what would happen. The integration had begun in me as well. I needed a place to hide, to think, to plan. Somewhere the Amalgam wouldn't think to look for me. Now I'm hiding at abandoned Firebase Echo in the Sierra Nevada mountains. Military installations like this one were decommissioned decades ago and wiped from official maps. It's the perfect place to hide, or it would be if I was still fully human. The symptoms started 3 days ago. Flashes of knowledge I couldn't possibly have, knowing a cup would fall before it tipped, dreaming of places I've never been that turned out to be real. My skin has developed a faint sheen in certain lights. I'm changing like the others. The exposure at Delphi affected me too, though not as severely. I'm still myself, still Elliot Mercer, but for how long? The Phoenix Files tell the rest of the story. The dimensional breach is widening. The post-humans, the ascended, are gaining power and numbers. The Amalgam is growing, a collective consciousness that spans minds across the country, possibly the world. They want to accelerate the change to bring everyone into their collective. Not everyone survives the transformation. Those whose neurological structure isn't compatible simply die when exposed to the energy from the rip. But enough do survive. Enough to build a critical mass. The military tried to weaponize the technology, of course. That was the Helios Division's mandate. But you can't weaponize something that wants to be weaponized, that has its own agenda. The entities allowed us to study them, to think we were in control, all while guiding us to the point where the rip could be stabilized and expanded. They're patient. They've been working toward this for decades, possibly centuries. Small incursions, retreats, always leaving just enough evidence to pique our curiosity, but never enough to prove anything conclusively, seeding the idea of aliens in our culture to prepare us for contact. The headaches are getting worse. With each one, I feel less like myself and more like something else. I see through eyes that aren't mine, in places I've never been. I hear voices speaking a language I shouldn't understand but somehow do. Yesterday I knocked a glass of water off the table. Without thinking, I reached out and stopped it in mid-air. The water hung suspended, defying gravity. When I realized what I was doing and broke concentration, the glass shattered on the floor. The transformation is accelerating. This morning, I woke to find the sheets fused with my skin. I had to concentrate to separate them, not painfully, but as if the boundary between my body and other matter had become negotiable. I've been documenting everything. The physical changes are the least of it. My mind feels simultaneously fragmented and expanded. I can hear thoughts from miles away. Confused, frightened people experiencing the first stages of transformation. Others like me, hiding and fighting the change. And the clear, directed thoughts of those who have fully embraced the amalgam. The news reports aren't reporting what's really happening. Internet and cell service is spotty, but from what I can gather, the official explanation is still atmospheric anomalies and mass hallucination events. There are reports of rioting in major cities, of military quarantines around certain areas, including a 100-mile perimeter around Groom Lake. Through the eyes of others in the collective, I've seen what's happening inside that perimeter. The rip has grown to cover almost the entire Papoose Lake area. The sky above it shimmers with colours that shouldn't exist in our spectrum. Entities move freely between dimensions now, thousands of them, and the transformed humans work alongside them, building structures that defy conventional physics. Towers that extend impossibly high, buildings that are larger on the inside than the outside, machines that manipulate gravity and space-time. Dr. Vance was wrong about one thing. The entities aren't what humans become. In a different evolutionary branch, they're what we will become if the transformation continues unchecked. They're from our future, or a potential future, one where humanity has abandoned individual identity for a collective consciousness, has transcended biological limitations through technology that manipulates reality at a fundamental level. They've come back to ensure this future happens, a temporal loop, ensuring their own existence by transforming their ancestors. I found notes in the Phoenix files about temporal paradoxes, about the possibility that the rip isn't just between dimensions but between time streams. Theoretical models suggesting that the entities were seeding our timeline with their technology to ensure their evolution. The headache that hit me today was the worst yet. When it passed, I found myself standing outside the firebase, staring at the sky. I had no memory of leaving my room. The sky above the mountains rippled like water, and for a moment I saw through it to another sky, purple-tinged with twin pale suns. I'm losing time now, periods where I'm not me, where the amalgam speaks through my mouth and acts through my body. They're getting longer. Yesterday, or was it the day before, I found myself in Pine Ridge, a small town 30 miles from the firebase. I have no memory of travelling there. I was standing in the town square, my hand pressed to the forehead of a woman I'd never met. She was one of dozens lying on the ground around me, all in the early stages of transformation. I'd done that. I'd spread the change. The part of me that was still Elliot Mercer screamed and fought to regain control, and eventually did, but for how long? I've barricaded myself in the firebase's old command centre. The walls are lined with lead, which seems to dampen the connection to the amalgam somewhat. I've gathered supplies, enough for weeks if necessary, though I'm not sure what I'm waiting for. Rescue? There is no rescue from this. The Phoenix files included a potential countermeasure, a theoretical way to close the rip to sever the connection between dimensions, but it would require getting back into the Delphi facility, accessing the original technology that created the breach. And I'm not sure I'm still human enough to do that without the amalgam becoming aware of my intentions. I've tried reaching out with my mind, searching for others like me, those partially transformed, but still fighting. I found a few. A former Air Force pilot named Reyes, hiding in the Colorado mountains. A physicist named Gallo who worked at Los Alamos before the transformation began. A teenage girl named Parker who somehow seems naturally resistant to full integration. We formed our own network separate from the amalgam, but using similar abilities. We share information, warn each other of the amalgam's movements. They're spreading out from Nevada in a deliberate pattern, establishing nodes in major population centers. Each fully transformed human can initiate the change in others, and the process accelerates exponentially. Current estimates give us weeks, maybe a month, before a critical mass is reached. After that, there's no stopping it. The military response has been predictably ineffective. Conventional weapons do little against beings who can manipulate matter and energy at will. Several tactical nuclear strikes were attempted near the primary breach point, but the explosions were somehow contained, folded into themselves and nullified. Our small resistance has been working on a plan. Gallo believes the transformation can be reversed if we collapse the original rip. The process requires an inverse resonance pulse generated from within the Delphi facility, the epicenter of the breach. Someone would need to get inside, access the original equipment and reprogram it to generate the pulse. That someone would need to be partially transformed, enough to pass as one of the amalgam, to use their abilities to navigate the altered reality of the facility, but still independent enough to work against them. I'm the obvious choice. I worked in the facility. I know the systems, and I'm further along in the transformation than the others, while still maintaining most of my humanity. It's a suicide mission, of course. The pulse would likely kill anyone at the epicenter. But what choice do I have? I've seen through the rip, glimpsed the future the entities come from. It's not a utopia. It's a hive of inhuman consciousness, stripped of everything that makes us human. Love, creativity, individuality, all sacrificed for a cold, efficient unity. The logistics are complex. We've been gathering equipment, plotting approach vectors that avoid the amalgam's sensing nodes. Reyes still has contacts in the military who don't know he's been changed, who might help us penetrate the perimeter around Groom Lake. But time is running out for me personally. The periods of lost time are increasing. This morning, I woke to find I'd written pages of text in a language that doesn't exist on Earth. My reflection shows my eyes beginning to darken, to fill with that telltale obsidian. I can feel the pull of the amalgam constantly now. A siren song promising unity, peace, an end to the isolation of individual consciousness. Part of me wants to give in, to stop fighting and join the chorus of minds that stretches across the country, across dimensions. But I hold on to memories that define me as Elliot Mercer. My childhood home in Connecticut, my father teaching me to fish, my first kiss behind the gymnasium in 9th grade, the smell of old books in the university library where I studied. These fragments of a human life are my anchor. We move tomorrow. Reyes has secured transport to the edge of the exclusion zone. From there, we'll proceed on foot, using the abilities granted by our partial transformation to avoid detection. Gallo has prepared the equipment needed to generate the inverse pulse. Parker will coordinate from a safe distance, using her unusual resistance to maintain the link between us without alerting the amalgam. If we succeed, the rip will close. The connection between dimensions will be severed. Those fully transformed may die or be trapped in a state between states. Those partially changed, like me, will, well, no one knows, return to normal perhaps, or more likely remain changed but free from the amalgam's influence. If we fail, there won't be an Earth as we know it much longer, just a staging ground for the next phase of post-human evolution. This may be my last entry. If someone finds this record, know that we tried, that some of us fought to remain human in the face of something that promised to be more than human. I used to think the conspiracy theorists were crazy, that stories of government cover-ups and alien technology were delusions. Now I know the truth is far worse than their wildest theories. The government isn't hiding aliens at Area 51, they're hiding our future, and it's horrifying. 3 days later, I'm writing this from inside the Delphi facility. Our infiltration was partially successful. Reyes didn't make it. The amalgam sensed him and overwhelmed his remaining humanity. Parker lost contact with us at the perimeter. Gallo and I made it inside, but we've been separated. The facility is unrecognizable. The laws of physics are merely suggestions here now. Corridors extend infinitely or loop back on themselves. Rooms exist in multiple states simultaneously. Transformed humans and entities from beyond the rip move through walls as if they're not there. I've managed to access a terminal and download the schematics for the pulse generator. The original equipment is in the chamber housing the primary rip. Now, a massive breach in reality that fills the central atrium of the facility. Through this rip, I can see a vast cityscape of impossible architecture. Spires that twist in ways that hurt the eye. Bridges that span distances that shouldn't fit in the space they occupy. And everywhere, entities moving with inhuman grace. Their forms only approximately human. My plan is to reach the primary equipment, initiate the pulse sequence, and collapse the rip. If I'm successful, this record may be all that remains of Project Obsidian, of the amalgam, of the future that almost was. The transformation has progressed further. I can move through solid objects now if I concentrate. I can perceive multiple time streams simultaneously, probability waves collapsing into certainty. But I can still remember being Elliot Mercer. I can still feel that human core inside me. For how much longer, I don't know. The amalgam is aware of me now. I can feel their collective attention turning in my direction, a spotlight of consciousness searching for the discordant note in their symphony. I don't have much time. To whoever finds this, if I succeed, the world will never know how close it came to the end of humanity as we understand it. If I fail, there will be no one left to understand why it matters. Either way, remember this. What makes us human isn't our biology or our intelligence. It's our individuality, our capacity to stand alone and say, I am myself, not you. To resist the comfort of the collective and bear the beautiful burden of being one consciousness among billions, connected but separate. They're coming. I can feel them approaching, their thoughts reaching for mine like tendrils of smoke. I have to reach the equipment to initiate the pulse. I go now to save what remains of humanity, including what remains of my own. Remember us, remember me. Elliot Mercer, former intelligence analyst, Pentagon last of the free minds. Final entry, discovered on a quantum drive recovered from the remains of Firebase Echo. The pulse worked. The rip is closing, reality reasserting itself, but I'm trapped on the wrong side. As the breach collapses, I can see Earth receding, like a dream upon waking. The entities are screaming, their careful plans of millennia unraveling. The amalgam consciousness is fragmenting, individual minds breaking free as the connection is severed. I don't know what will happen to me here, in this place that was never meant for human consciousness. Perhaps I'll fade away as the last of my humanity dissolves. Perhaps I'll become something new, neither human nor post-human, but something else entirely. From this side of the collapsing rip, I can still see glimpses of Earth, the transformed beginning to revert, confused and disoriented, but individual again. Gallo implementing the secondary protocols to ensure the technology can never be reactivated. The military establishing quarantine zones around remaining hotspots. The world will recover, though it will never be the same. Those who were changed, even partially, will carry the memory of what they almost became. Some will long for it. Some will live in fear of it returning. But they will live as humans, not as components of the amalgam. As for Area 51 and Project Obsidian, I hope the truth stays buried beneath the rubble of the Delphi facility. Some knowledge is too dangerous, some temptations too great. If humanity is to survive, it must find its own path forward, not one dictated by post-human entities from a sterile future. The rip is almost closed now, a pinprick in the fabric of reality. My last glimpse of Earth, of home, is fading. Remember us, remember me. Remember what it means to be human.